The ring felt heavier than it should have in Elias Carter's trembling hand. He stood outside his office door, watching through the glass wall as Lena Brooks typed away at her desk, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. In exactly 3 minutes, he would call her in. In 5, he would fire her. And in 7, if his courage held, he would ask her to marry him. His heart hammered against his ribs like it was trying to escape. This was insane. This violated every principle of professionalism he'd built his career on. But loving her in silence had become its own kind of violation, a betrayal of something more fundamental than company policy. Elias pushed open the door. "Lena, can I see you for a moment?" She looked up, her warm brown eyes meeting his, and smiled that smile that had been slowly destroying him for 18 months. "Of course. Give me 2 seconds. He retreated into his office, the sleek minimalist space that suddenly felt like a cage. Through the window, San Francisco sprawled below him, lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. He'd conquered this city, built an empire from code and ambition, but none of it meant anything without her. Lena entered, closing the door behind her. "What's up? Please don't tell me Jenkins is backing out of the merger again." "No. Nothing like that." Elias gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please sit." She sat, crossing her legs, her navy dress professional yet elegant. Everything about Lena was like that, polished but never cold, competent without being mechanical. She transformed not just his schedule but his entire world, and he'd been too afraid to acknowledge it until it was too late to stay silent. "You look serious," she said, a hint of concern creeping into her voice. "Is everything okay? I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond." He remained standing, pacing to the window because looking at her made his prepared speech evaporate. "Over the past 18 months, you've been an exceptional assistant. You've anticipated my needs before I knew them myself, managed crises with grace, and brought a level of humanity to this company that I didn't know we were missing." "Thank you," she said slowly. "But this sounds like—" "Please." He held up a hand, still not turning. "I'm not finished. You've done everything right, Lena. Everything. Which is why what I'm about to do is completely unfair." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. "I'm letting you go." He heard her sharp intake of breath, the slight creak of the chair as she shifted forward. "What?" Now he turned, forcing himself to meet her gaze. Her eyes were wide, confused, hurt flashing across her features. "Effective immediately. You'll receive 6 months severance, full benefits for a year, and letters of recommendation that will open any door in this city." "Elias, I don't understand." Her voice cracked. "What did I do wrong? Just tell me and I'll fix it. I can." "You didn't do anything wrong." He moved closer, his hands clenched at his sides. "That's the problem. You're perfect, Lena. You're brilliant and kind and funny, and you make me want to be better than I am. And I can't have you working for me anymore because I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Lena's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. Elias pressed on, the dam broken now, everything pouring out. "I know this is inappropriate. I know I'm your boss and this violates every HR policy we have. That's why I had to fire you first. Because I can't keep pretending I see you as just an employee when every morning I look forward to you walking through that door. When I notice what you're wearing and how you take your coffee and the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. When I lie awake at night thinking about you." "Elias," she whispered. He dropped to one knee. Her hand flew to her mouth. From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside, a vintage diamond ring caught the fading light, elegant and timeless. "I've spent the last month setting up interviews for you at 3 different firms. They're all prepared to offer you positions with better titles and significantly better pay than what I could give you here. Your career will not suffer because of my feelings, I swear it. But I can't let you walk out of here without knowing that if you'd have me, if you'd take this risk with me, I would spend every day trying to deserve you." Lena stared at him, tears streaming down her face. For one agonizing moment, Elias thought she might simply stand up and leave. Then she started laughing through her tears, a sound somewhere between joy and disbelief. "You can't just fire me and then propose," she said, her voice breaking. "That's not how this works." "I know." He stayed on his knee, the ring extended between them like an offering. "I'm doing everything wrong. But I'd rather do this wrong than spend another day doing the right thing and losing you." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, mascara smudging slightly. "You're insane. You know that? Absolutely insane." "Is that a no?" "I didn't say that." She looked at the ring, at him, back at the ring. "How long have you felt this way?" "Honestly? Since your interview. You walked in and told me your biggest weakness was caring too deeply, and I thought, that's not a weakness. That's everything I'm missing. Every day since has been an exercise in self-control. You could have said something. You're my employee. Was my employee. God, this is complicated." He shifted on his knee, the position becoming uncomfortable. "I couldn't risk your career or put you in a position where you'd feel pressured. That's why I had to do it this way." Lena stood, and Elias's heart sank. But instead of walking to the door, she stepped closer until she was standing right in front of him. She reached down and took the ring box from his hand, examining it closely. "This is beautiful," she said softly. "It's exactly what I would have chosen." "I know. I pay attention." She looked down at him, her expression softening. "You really set up interviews for me?" 3. They're expecting your call next week. Top firms, positions that will challenge you, help you grow. I won't be your ceiling, Lena. Even if you say no to this, to me, you deserve better than being someone's assistant when you could be running your own division. And if I say yes? His breath caught. Then we figure it out. Together. As equals. She extended her left hand. "Put it on." His hands shook so badly he nearly dropped the ring twice before sliding it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd stolen one of her other rings to get the size, another small act of calculated devotion. Lena pulled him to his feet, and suddenly they were standing so close he could smell her perfume, something subtle and warm. "You know I have to finish my notice period, right? I'm not walking out on you with projects half done." He laughed, giddy with relief. "Ever the professional." "Always." She touched his face, her fingers gentle against his cheek. "You're not losing me as an employee just to lose me as a fiancé because you think I'm flaky." 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Then I'll take one of those interviews." "But Elias," her expression grew serious. "We do this right. No special treatment, no awkwardness in the office. I'll transfer to someone else for my remaining time here, and we keep our personal life completely separate from work." "Agreed." "And you take me to dinner. A proper date. Because I'm not marrying a man who proposed before he even kissed me." "I can do that." He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She didn't. Their kiss was soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid the other might disappear. Then Lena wrapped her arms around his neck and deepened it, and Elias felt something in his chest crack open, some locked door he'd been guarding for years. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. "This is crazy. Completely. Your board is going to lose their minds." "Let them. I'll step down if I have to." She pulled back, eyes wide. "Elias, no. You've built this company from nothing. I won't let you destroy that for me." "You're not destroying anything. You're the first thing that's made sense in years." He took both her hands in his. "Besides, I'm not planning to step down. I'm planning to change the culture here. To build something where people don't have to choose between their careers and their hearts. You've shown me what this place could be if we led with humanity instead of just ambition." "That's a nice speech, Mr. Carter." She smiled, that brilliant smile that had haunted his dreams. "Now let's see if you can follow through." The next 2 weeks were the strangest of Elias's life. Lena transferred to report to his COO, and they maintained careful professional distance in the office. But every evening, they'd leave separately and meet at her apartment or a quiet restaurant, talking for hours about everything and nothing. He learned that she'd taken night classes for her MBA for 3 years, graduating just months before starting at his company. That she'd put her younger brother through college after their parents died, taking on work she was overqualified for to make sure he had opportunities. That she loved old movies and terrible puns and the way the city looked just before dawn. She learned that his empire was built on the foundation of a broken engagement, that he'd thrown himself into work to avoid feeling anything, that he'd spent years confusing success with happiness. That he was terrified of failing the people who counted on him. That he'd never learned how to want something just for himself until on her last day, the office threw her a goodbye party. Colleagues who'd worked with her for over a year expressed genuine sadness at her departure, and Elias watched with pride as she hugged each of them, promising to stay in touch. When everyone had left and they stood alone in the empty office, surrounded by half-eaten cake and wilting balloons, Lena turned to him. "So, I start at Morrison Tech on Monday. I know. I may have called Robert Morrison personally to tell him that if he doesn't treat you like the asset you are, I'll poach half his engineering team." She laughed. "That's probably unethical." "Probably. I'm learning to live with that." She stepped closer, adjusting his tie even though it didn't need adjusting. "Thank you. For seeing me. For risking everything. Thank you for saying yes when you could have run screaming." "Oh, I considered it." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "But then I remembered that I've been in love with you since that time you stayed up all night helping me prepare the investor presentation, even though you had that conference call at 6 a.m. You ordered Thai food at midnight and made terrible jokes to keep me awake, and I thought, this man is either the best boss in the world or I'm in serious trouble. You never said anything. Neither did you. We're both idiots." "Agreed." He kissed her forehead. "Want to go home?" "Whose home?" "Ours. I'm not letting you stay in that cramped apartment anymore. Move in with me." "Elias Carter, are you asking me to live in sin before we're married?" She pressed a hand to her chest in mock scandal. "I'm asking you to share my space, my life, and my extremely comfortable bed while we plan a wedding. Unless you want a long engagement." "Hell no. I've waited long enough for you." She grabbed her purse. "Let's go home." 6 months later, they stood on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, surrounded by 50 of their closest friends and family. Lena wore a simple ivory dress that moved like water in the breeze, and Elias forgot every word of his vows the moment he saw her. His best man had to nudge him twice before he remembered to speak. "Lena," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "You once told me in an interview that your greatest weakness was caring too deeply. I didn't know then that you'd teach me that caring deeply isn't a weakness at all. It's the only thing that matters. You've made me better. Not just better at running a company or making decisions, but better at being human. At letting people in. At believing that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with." Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. "I promise to support your dreams as fiercely as you've supported mine. To be your partner, not your boss in every sense of the word. To make you terrible coffee in the morning and listen to your ideas at midnight and remind you how extraordinary you are every single day. I promise to love you without limits, without conditions, without fear. You're my best decision, Lena Brooks. And I can't wait to spend forever proving it." By the time he finished, half the guests were crying too. Lena squeezed his hands, then delivered her own vows with the same eloquent grace she brought to everything. "Elias, you saw me when I was invisible. You challenged me when others underestimated me. And when you loved me enough to risk everything so I could be free. That's not just love, that's respect. That's partnership. That's everything I ever wanted in a person. I promise to keep challenging you, supporting you, and reminding you that vulnerability isn't weakness. I promise to build something beautiful with you, not just in business but in life. And I promise that no matter how successful we become, I'll never let you forget that the best version of you is the one who's brave enough to care." When the officiant pronounced them married, Elias kissed his wife like they were the only two people in the world. The applause that followed was thunderous, but he barely heard it. All he heard was her laughing against his lips, joyful and free. At the reception, his COO approached him with a knowing smile. "So, when do we announce the merger?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "What merger?" "Come on, boss. You think we haven't noticed you've been working with Morrison Tech on joint ventures for months? And now his COO just happens to be your wife. Technically, I'm working with my wife on joint ventures. Morrison just happens to employ her. Elias grinned. But yes, we're combining forces. Officially, Lena will be COO of the merged entity. Bet the board loved that. The board can adjust or resign. We're building something different. Something better. He watched Lena across the room, dancing with her brother, her head thrown back in laughter. She taught me that. 3 months after the wedding, they stood together in front of their combined team, announcing the official merger. Lena commanded the room with quiet authority, laying out their vision for a company culture built on innovation, integrity, and humanity. No more policies that forced people to choose between their careers and their hearts. No more cultures where success meant sacrificing everything else. Afterward, as they walked back to their shared office, Elias caught her hand. You know, I never thanked you properly. For what? For taking a chance on me. For saying yes when you could have walked away. For being brave enough to love someone as broken as I was. Lena stopped, turning to face him fully. You were never broken. You were just waiting for the right person to remind you that you're human. And guess what? So was I. She kissed him softly. We saved each other, Elias. That's what partners do. He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling her heart beat against his chest. Around them, their company buzzed with energy and purpose, transformed from a cold corporate machine into something warmer, something human. On his desk, he'd kept a small memento from that first day, a sticky note in Lena's handwriting that she'd left during her last week. It read, "Remember, conquer the world but have coffee first." He'd conquered the world, found the love of his life, built something meaningful. And every morning, without fail, they had coffee together before facing whatever challenges the day brought. That night, curled up together in their home overlooking the bay, Lena traced patterns on his chest. Do you ever regret it? Firing me? Every day, he said, then felt her tense. I regret not doing it sooner. I wasted so much time being afraid. She relaxed, smiling against his shoulder. Well, you made up for it. That proposal was insane. But effective. But insane. She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him with those eyes that had undone him from the beginning. Promise me something? Anything. That we never stop being this honest with each other. That we never let fear make our decisions again. That we keep choosing each other even when it's hard. He pulled her down for a kiss, slow and deep and full of promise. I promise. Every day, Lena. I choose you every day. She settled back against him, and they lay in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle below. Elias thought about that moment in his office, how his hand had trembled holding that ring, how terrified he'd been that she'd say no. Love didn't always come at convenient times. It didn't follow rules or respect boundaries. It just arrived, unexpected and overwhelming, demanding courage instead of permission. And when you found it, really found it, the only wrong choice was walking away. He'd spent years building walls, confusing loneliness for strength. Then Lena had walked into his life with her honest eyes and her caring heart, and she'd demolished every defense he'd constructed. She'd made him vulnerable. Human. She'd saved him just as he liked to think he'd saved her. But the truth was simpler and more beautiful than that. They'd found each other. And in finding each other, they'd found themselves. 6 years into their marriage, they stood at a press conference, announcing a new initiative. Their company would fund scholarships for young professionals like Lena had been, provide mentorship programs, and offer flexible work arrangements that honored people's full humanity. They'd weathered criticism, lost some investors, and gained others who shared their vision. During the Q&A, a young reporter asked Elias, "Mr. Carter, some critics say you've gone soft, that you've lost your competitive edge. How do you respond?" Elias looked at Lena, who gave him that private smile that still made his heart skip. He turned back to the reporter. "I used to think success meant winning at any cost, even if it meant losing myself. My wife taught me that real success is building something sustainable, something human, something worth more than just profit margins. If that makes me soft, I'll take it. Because I've never been happier, my company has never been stronger, and the people who work for us actually want to be here. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. The room erupted in applause, but Elias barely heard it. He was watching Lena, remembering that day 6 years ago when he'd knelt in his office and risked everything. Best decision he'd ever made. After the press conference, they walked through their headquarters, greeting employees, checking in with teams. The space felt different now, warmer, more alive. People brought their whole selves to work, didn't hide their humanity behind corporate masks. And productivity had soared, not despite the changes but because of them. In the elevator alone together, Lena leaned against him. "I'm proud of you. We built this together." "I know. But you're the one who had to change the most. That takes courage." He kissed the top of her head. "You gave me that courage. Every day." They rode in comfortable silence, two people who'd learned that the best partnerships weren't built on perfection but on honesty, respect, and the willingness to keep choosing each other. Even when it was scary. Especially when it was scary. That night, as they prepared for bed, Elias watched Lena remove her jewelry, the same ritual he'd witnessed 1,000 times. She caught him staring in the mirror. "What?" she asked, smiling. "Just thinking about how lucky I am. How different my life would be if I'd been too afraid to tell you." She turned, crossing to him. "But you weren't. You were brave enough to risk everything. That's who you are, Elias. That's who you've always been. Only with you." He took her hands, the ring he'd given her 6 years ago still perfect on her finger. "You make me brave." "We make each other brave," she corrected. "That's the whole point." Later, lying in the darkness with her breathing steady beside him, Elias thought about all the versions of his life he'd never lived. The one where he'd stayed silent, where fear had won, where he'd let her walk away without knowing how he felt. Those ghost lives haunted him sometimes, reminders of how close he'd come to losing everything that mattered. But he'd been brave. For one moment, for one decision, he'd chosen love over fear. And that choice had transformed everything. In the end, maybe that was all any of them could do. Choose love when it came. Choose courage over comfort. Choose the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of being human over the safe illusion of control. He'd fired the woman he loved. And in doing so, he'd found himself. That was the story he'd tell their children someday. The story of the day everything changed. The day he knelt in his office and offered his heart on a silver platter. The day she said yes. The best day of his life. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that love is worth risking everything for, leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose between playing it safe and following your heart? What did you choose? And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about the courage it takes to be human, to be vulnerable, to be real. Because in a world that often tells us to play it safe, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply love without limits. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story about the moments that change everything.